you want to hear details, but you don't. It's just I get this image in my head of, God, what she must have been going through. And
Did you kill Christy Wilson?
No, I had nothing to do with her disappearance.
How could she simply disappear after she was with you?
I don't have answers for that.
He's a consistent narcissistic manipulator.
The family of Christy Wilson say they've been tormented by her whereabouts since she went missing some 15 years ago. Now, law enforcement officials are able to provide some closure for the family through their discovery after returning to the place at the center of this mystery all that time ago.
You're listening to Truly Criminal, the home of true crime. To see the video version of this case, including the footage and photos, you can find us on YouTube. Just search for Truly Criminal. The 5th of October 2005. Thunder Valley Casino in Lincoln, California. Sat at one of the blackjack tables enjoying her evening was Christy Wilson. She was good at blackjack, having studied the game and how to play. She was described as a whiz with numbers, able to work out the odds and percentages quickly in her head. She had been there for a while, and after a call with her boyfriend, she told him she would be home soon. She never made it home. The next day he filed a missing persons report, and the search for Christy Wilson was on. "27-year-old Christy was the daughter of Debbie and Dennis. After her parents' relationship ended, Debbie married a man called Pat, who worked as a police detective in San Jose. She was extremely close to her family, and her best friend Tiffany described the pair as soul sisters, doing everything together. I picture her in our front room just dancing and laughing and having so much fun. I could be having the worst day and she would always be there for me. We always knew that no matter what we said, we were there for each other." Christy was in a relationship with a man called Danny Burlando. Danny and Christy had met the year prior while playing blackjack at the casino, and they soon moved in together. The relationship was described as a tumultuous one. About a month prior, a fight between the pair had become so aggressive and loud, the police were called to the apartment. Both were placed under arrest for domestic violence, and now Christy was missing. They looked at the call logs, which showed that Danny had called her phone 78 times. As a police officer, Pat said it didn't sit right with him, and he had a gut feeling that something was majorly wrong. Nothing about this was adding up. Her car was still in the parking lot, and the apartment didn't reveal any clues either. Nothing was missing, there was no evidence of a fight or a struggle. There was also nothing to show that she had upped and left. Everything important to her, including her beloved cat, were all still there. She wouldn't just leave and not tell anybody, there was no way. She also had an upcoming job interview in the next few days, and she wouldn't have missed that either. Danny said he had last spoken to her on Tuesday the 4th of October at 10:28 p.m, when she had received his call while at the casino. They spoke for 55 seconds. I told her to come home and she was like, "Okay, I'm finishing up, I'll be home soon." Footage of her taking the call was captured on surveillance cameras inside the casino. When she failed to come home, he started leaving messages for her.
"Courtroom Proceedings on Wednesday. It's now been 24 hours since I talked to you last, and I'm worried sick about you. Please call me. If you're okay, call me. If you're not okay, call me. Let me know what's going on."
But there was still no response from Christy. He decided to go to the police and file a missing persons report. Investigator Murchison interviewed Danny and described him as being very cooperative. Danny said he had been having dinner with his parents at their house on the night Christy vanished, but there were a few hours that nobody could account for. From 11:30 p.m. when he was dropped home to when he used his phone the following day. The police decided to take the investigation back to where they knew she had last been seen, the Thunder Valley Casino. The casino was covered by a network of cameras, and these would be able to give a minute-by-minute account of exactly what Christy had done that night. Christy could be seen pulling into the casino parking lot and heading inside. She sat at one of the blackjack tables and began to play. As the footage continued, something very quickly stood out. Sat next to Christie was an older male. He could be seen talking to her and attempting to put his arm around her, but she quickly and firmly brushed him off. She was drinking, but not heavily. The staff in the casino knew her quite well and found her behaviour that night to be not like the Christie they knew. The abrupt change in her personality was very strange, and some of the staff discussed asking her to leave due to it. Then the man sitting next to her got involved, telling the staff he would look after her. The pair left the casino and walked out together at 1:13 a.m, but as the police knew, her car didn't move. She had seemingly vanished from the parking lot. Search and rescue teams were organised and deployed and were searching everywhere they could think of. They searched by car, by foot and by helicopter, and people were coming from all over to help find Christie and bring her home. Debbie was determined. She was going to find her daughter. I want my daughter back, and I want her back now. I may be 5'1" and blonde, but they just met a barracuda, and the fight's on. So, who was the man in the footage? Luckily for the police, it did not take them long to track him down. Earlier in the night, and only a few minutes before Christie arrived, he had used his casino card at one of the slot machines. The card was registered to a 53-year-old Mario Garcia. Mario Garcia was a married father of 2 teenage sons and had a good job at the local hospital working as a project manager. His wife Jean called him a family man and a great dad, as did one of his sons, Chris. The police went to his property and grounds that covered 5 acres in Auburn, California, to conduct searches of the home and vehicle. When they arrived, he had scratches on his chest and face. Nobody who had been at the casino remembered him having those scratches on the night he sat with Christie. One of those was an emergency room doctor sat 2 feet away from him. I didn't see any injuries, no, and I'm reasonably good at making those kind of observations, because that's what I do for a living, he said. It was also revealed the day after Christie had disappeared he had gone to the eye doctor, and his co-workers had noticed the injuries too. He said they had come from poison oak and falling from a tree.
Looks like somebody smacked you under your eye. Well, I had a little accident with the tractor in the tree and got poison oak on my face.
But this would have meant he would have been doing yard work after arriving home from the casino and before going to work, in the early hours of the morning. These were not random scratches one would expect to find in a yard accident. These had a distinct pattern. They looked like they had been caused by someone dragging their fingernails across his face and chest. He was subsequently arrested on a weapons charge and held. He said he had absolutely nothing to do with whatever had happened to Christie. He said they'd simply played blackjack together and that was it. They'd walked to his car, said goodbye and went their separate ways. Footage showed his car leaving the lot 4 minutes later, and it looked like there was nobody else in there with him. He said that maybe her boyfriend had something to do with it. Although her relationship with Danny had not been good, there was just nothing to link him to her disappearance, and he seemed to be genuinely worried for her welfare. All eyes were now firmly on Mario Garcia. As part of their inquiries, they looked into his criminal history, and what they found made them even more concerned. In 1978, near Oakland, California, the then 27-year-old Mario met his neighbour, 26-year-old Wendy Ward, and the pair soon began dating. Although things initially appeared to be okay, he showed he had an extremely nasty temper when she tried to call time on their relationship. The 12th of January 1979. Mario had grabbed Wendy and forced her into his van. He was holding my neck, or he was holding my head, and he says, you do anything, I will take your head and I will smash it. I think he said to me, take off your clothes or something like that. I said, no, I was just clawing, scratching, whatever I could do. Then he started to choke me. I couldn't breathe. She added that she thought she was going to die. After driving her back to his apartment, Mario raped her. He pulled a gun out of his cabinet and he held it to my head, and he pulled the trigger. He says, well, it wasn't loaded this time, but basically I can come and get you any time I want. He then raped her for a second time. He then calmly made himself a sandwich and drove her home. I'm surprised that I actually am alive. I'm very lucky, Wendy later said. Wendy went straight to the hospital and Mario was soon in handcuffs. The Amadea County District Attorney's Office made the recommendation that he be charged with 2 counts of forcible rape, 1 count of kidnapping, 1 count of burglary, and 1 count of assault with a deadly weapon. The case, however, would go nowhere for 2 years, and he would then be offered a plea deal, pleading guilty to 1 count of assault with a deadly weapon. His punishment? He was given 18 months probation. After Christy went missing, Detective Murchison went to talk to Wendy about her time with Mario. She later said she felt sick to her stomach when she heard that Christy had disappeared. She told the detective about her experience of being with him, and also told him something else. Something extremely worrying. In 1979, after his relationship with Wendy had ended, he began seeing another woman called Lynette Smith. Lynette was described by her brother Tom as outgoing and fun to be around. Just like Wendy, the relationship was extremely volatile. Mario was angry with Lynette after she chose to terminate a pregnancy after falling pregnant by him, but they decided to celebrate the holiday season with each other, and with Lynette's mom Violet too. After having Christmas dinner, all 3 of them got into Lynette's vehicle. That Christmas night, a call came into the emergency services. By Oakland Airport, a car had plunged into the Oakland estuary. When they arrived, Lynette and her mother were deceased. Mario had survived. He later said that he had panicked and took his seatbelt off, opened a window and climbed out as the water rushed in. Everybody else, I presumed, got out, he said. He told the officers that Lynette had been the driver, but the police were not able to confirm who had been behind the wheel. He hired a criminal lawyer when the police went to talk to him, and his lawyer advised him, say nothing. Following this, Lynette's devastated brother Tom would later reach out to an old friend, none other than Wendy. When Wendy heard that she had been in a relationship with a man called Mario Garcia, and that she and her mother had been killed in a car crash, Wendy was stunned. She told him that she too had been in a relationship with him, and told Tom what had happened to her during their time together. No charges were filed against Mario for the deaths of Lynette and her mother. For the officers looking into the disappearance of Christy Wilson, this was all painting an extremely disturbing picture of an extremely disturbing pattern of behaviour. They now turned their attention to his Toyota. His car had been cleaned out and the mats in the trunk had been removed, but not all of the evidence was lost. In the trunk of his car and on a door handle, they found hairs that were consistent with Christy. They were compared against the DNA found on the hairs on Christy's hairbrush. They matched. The chances of these hairs belonging to someone else were 1 in 720 quintillion. There was a small stain on the back seat, and presumptive testing indicated that this was blood, but due to the stain repellent, it couldn't have DNA analysis performed on it. To try and piece more of this baffling puzzle together, the officers went back to the security cameras at the casino. They knew they had left together at 1:13 a.m, so would the cameras from the parking lot show them anything else? As they walked away, she could be seen pushing his arm away as he attempted to put it around her. Frustratingly, the cameras that covered the parking lot were not fixed. They moved and scanned the lot periodically, causing different sections to come in and out of view. However, when his Toyota was unlocked, the lights would flash 4 times. 3 minutes and 41 seconds later, the headlights went on, and he began to pull out of the space. He told the police that she had left her phone in the casino and had gone back inside to pick it up. None of this was backed up by the surveillance cameras. She hadn't gone back in. Meaning that the last confirmed sighting of her was the footage that showed her walking away with Mario. Officers believe that she was incapacitated in the vehicle, possibly in the rear seats, meaning she wouldn't have been visible to the cameras. He said he had driven straight home, but if this was true, why did the cameras show him driving the wrong way? He said he got home, went to bed, and then left for work at around 8:30, but his phone records said otherwise. He had actually called his wife at 7:51 a.m, and this call pinged off of a tower north of his property. His wife would not cooperate or talk with the police. The more they looked into his story, the more holes they found. He was adamant that he had made it into work for an appointment he had scheduled at 9 a.m, but his co-workers said no, he was late. He actually arrived nearer to 10. It had now been 3 weeks since Christy was last seen in the casino, and the searchers had turned up nothing. The decision was made to charge Mario Garcia with murder without a body. It would be the first attempt at a prosecution like this in the county. People who knew Christy speculated as to whether or not he put something in her drink. It was later discovered that a week after Christy went missing, Mario had made online searches regarding how they tested for date rape drugs. He also visited websites looking at forensic firearms evidence and forensic toxicology. He was still denying any involvement. He was interviewed by 48 Hours in 2006 and said he had nothing to do with Christy going missing. We were at that table for a period of time until that table got hot. She asked me, "Hey, do you want to go to another table?" And I said, "Sure." Correspondent Erin Moriarty asked him, "What happened to her, Mario? How could she simply disappear after she was with you?" "I don't have answers for that," he said. What about what had happened with Wendy? He said she made allegations that were not true. According to him, there was no gun involved, and referred to their relationship as a, quote, stormy one. He denied he was physically abusive. In September 2006, the trial of Mario Garcia began. His lawyer argued that there was not enough evidence to convict him of murder, and said that Christy could still be alive somewhere. But, frankly, the facts spoke for themselves. He had been the last person to see her. He was seen leaving with her. He had scratches on him that were not there when they were sat at the table. He had driven away from the direction of his house and was not at home when he said he was. He was late for work the following day and had to go to the eye doctor because of the injuries to his face. He had made several concerning internet searches, and most damningly of all, her blood and hair was found in his car. The jury did not hear about his previous episodes of violence, but there was one person who made sure she was there to support Christy's family: Wendy. In an amazing display of solidarity, she arrived at the courthouse to be there and show her family they were not alone. As 2006 came to an end, so did the trial, and the verdict was soon in. Mario Garcia was found guilty of murder. His sentencing would take place in January, and Debbie said that she was hopeful that if offered a reduced sentence, he would finally admit to where Christy was, but he didn't. I suppose that at this hearing I'm supposed to ask for mercy, for forgiveness, and to show remorse. However, I will not do such a thing. I did not kill Christy Wilson. I am innocent. Mario Garcia was sentenced to 25 years to life, but this would end up increasing. Due to his previous attack on Wendy, the minimum term was doubled to 59 years to life. His sentence began on January the 11th, 2007. After his conviction, his wife Jean filed for divorce. The sentencing hearing gave Christy's family the chance to address her killer. Stacey, Christy's sister, said that Christy was her other half. "She was a part of me. I've lost a part of my past, present, and future." Christy's stepfather called Mario a sick human being and an animal. "I don't believe he will ever tell us where our daughter is. I have no doubt he'd kill again." Christy's father, Dennis, was overcome with emotion as he told the court, "I'll miss not walking her down the aisle, playing with my grandchildren. That has been taken away from me because of your disregard for human life." Also in the courtroom were the loved ones of Lynette and Violet, who had died when the car they were in had crashed into the Oakland estuary. Lynette's sister and Violet's daughter Marilyn said in a prepared statement that was not read to the court, but was taken into account by the judge, "Mario, only you and God know for sure what happened on the night of December 25th, 1979. I don't know if there's a life hereafter, but I do know that if there is, my mom and Lynn met Christy as she arrived, and the three of them helped me write this statement." She added that she hoped he would never, ever be released from prison. Finally, he had been brought to justice. But it was certainly bittersweet. As Detective Murchison said, "I think the system failed Wendy. It failed a lot of people. It failed Lynette Smith and Violet Davis. Unfortunately, these investigations were handled differently back then." Although her killer had now been caught, one question remained. Where was Christy Wilson? After he was found guilty, Debbie spoke to reporters and said she felt like justice had been served. Now, if he's any kind of man, he'll tell us where he disposed of my daughter. The agony of not knowing where she was all-consuming. 2 investigators that had been on the case from the beginning, Don Murchison and Nuno Tavares, were not giving up. They were determined they were going to find Christy. For them, Mario being convicted was not the end. They carried out searches in septic tanks, abandoned mine shafts, literally anywhere they could think of. Detective Murchison said, "We actually pumped an entire septic tank out. We pumped out the entire 2,000 gallons of sewage and went through it by hand. But still, there was nothing. We wanted to find her to show Mario, you are not going to win. You're not winning this. We're going to find her and bring her home to the family." Mario Garcia continued to file appeals against his conviction, something that made life incredibly hard for Christy's family. Debbie said, "You can't move forward completely when you have all these appeals. You know, it's like you move forward 5 steps and then you're back in it again." Flash forward to 2017. Debbie decided to contact Mario and he replied to her via letter. Though he didn't confess to killing Christy, he did apologise to Debbie, even insinuating that if he could be released early from prison, he would offer up information. "I would give you anything if I could go home to die surrounded by my family," he wrote. Ultimately, Debbie decided to cease contact with him. "I was sitting there thinking, what on earth are you doing, Debbie? Get a grip. It would be such a disgrace. He will not use my daughter's body as a bargaining chip." Detectives Murchison and Tavares continued their efforts in finding Christy. They decided to trace Mario's sons and speak to them, asking if there was anything at all they could remember that might help them find Christy. Andy and Chris, Mario's sons, went through the 4 days after Christy disappeared in detail. On the Saturday after she vanished, Chris had a soccer game. He had observed his dad working on a tractor around the property, saying he had a crazed look in his eyes and that he was working frantically. Mario then firmly told his son he wasn't going to the game. This was totally out of character. After hearing about this, they decided to conduct another search of the property. It had been searched before, but they decided it was definitely worth another try. The family had left the property in 2007, and the officers wanted Chris to point to exactly where he had seen his dad that day, right next to the detached garage, right along the road. August 2020. They used ground-penetrating radar equipment to look at a 5-acre radius. The first 2 hits, they got nothing. Then, on the 3rd attempt, 100 yards from the home, they found something. A bone. A bone that belonged to Christy Wilson. As they removed more and more dirt, Christy's skeleton was finally found and identified via dental records. There was no clothing or jewellery.
In Placer County, the body of Christy Wilson has been found 15 years after she was kidnapped from Thunder Valley Casino.
Yeah, deputies say this is the result of Christy's family and detectives never giving up. Now, this discovery doesn't change anything about the killer's case, but it does bring Christy's family some peace. Deputies say her killer, Mario Garcia, did not lead them to the body. They say he has never made an honest effort to cooperate on this case.
Why hadn't this been spotted by the first search team? Well, it wasn't concentrated to a small area. There was landscaping across the property, and he had at least 4 days to do it. They had taken cadaver dogs around the property as part of the first search, but the dogs didn't detect anything. Detective Tavares said cadaver dogs are a tool like any other tool that we use. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Her cause of death could not be determined, but she was found to have a broken hand and a broken nose. Christy's family would later address the media following this revelation.
Today is an absolute joyous day. It's a day that for 14 and a half years, I and my family have traveled a journey, and to this day that we have so longed for.
Debbie Boyd, the mother of Christy Wilson, finally getting some closure.
It's a day of peace, a peace that we haven't had. And we are so happy to finally be able to close this chapter of torment.
But even after months of searching, Wilson's body was never found until last week. That's when detectives returned to Garcia's former home in Auburn. This is drone video of that 4.5-acre property. They had searched her before several times, but this time they found her thanks to new underground technology and some new information.
Ground penetrating radar. It wasn't until we used that ground penetrating radar that we were able to get a more narrow defined area to search where we located her.
Placer County Sheriff Devin Bell says they never stopped looking for Wilson.
We've all been longing for closure, and today we can move one step closer.
The Placer County DA calls this a great day for justice.
That jury had a difficult task. They got it right. And they knew it, and we all knew it.
This is an example of the greatest level of perseverance of a police department. I mean, seriously, these men worked tirelessly on this case. They persevered.
It was a knock on Debbie's Scottsdale, Arizona home one warm August night. Placer County detectives, who worked countless hours on Christie's case, packed a bag and came here to hop on a plane. They wanted to tell Debbie in person.
I'm standing in front of my door in Scottsdale, Arizona. I was kind of just in a fog, like, what are you doing here? I went, oh my gosh, did you find her? And they shook their head yes. And with that, I think I went into shock a bit. And I kept asking them, are you sure? Are you absolutely sure? And they said, yes, we are. We're absolutely sure.
At the press conference announcing her remains had been found, Placer County Sheriff Devin Bell addressed the media. What's important for everybody to remember is the search for Christy never stopped. We've been looking since 2005. This is about detectives and investigators being tenacious and committed to piecing together a puzzle. Part of the difficulty in us finding Christy, as I'm not going to use his name, was a convicted murderer who refused to cooperate and would not supply any information that would lead to closing this for the family or extend any sense of compassion towards them. And that's what we're about today, is closure for the family.
I feel we do now have a sense, although bittersweet, there is a sense of peace. We can, the torment of not knowing where she is, coming up with a million different scenarios in our own head, that is gone. I can let that go now. And we can bring her home and give her a proper and respectful burial that she so deserves.
Christmas Eve 2020.
New tonight, a notorious Sacramento area killer has died behind bars. Mario Garcia, convicted of killing Christy Wilson in 2005, died of pneumonia on Christmas Eve.
Just a few months after Christy's remains were finally found, Mario Garcia died from complications relating to COVID-19. He was 68 years old. The story of Christy Wilson is a tragic and heartbreaking one, but it is also a story of dogged police work, sheer determination, and a refusal to give up. The dedication of her family and the officers into finding her and bringing her home is nothing short of inspiring. As Detective Murchison said, we never gave up on trying to find Christy. We looked for her for 15 years. Her family certainly never gave up. They trusted us with the most precious thing they had in their lives, which was their daughter. We were going to bring her home. Christy Wilson was a deeply loved and cherished woman, someone who undoubtedly would have gone on to achieve numerous great things. As Debbie said, I was so blessed to be her mum for 27 years, and that I will carry with me forever.
We are so grateful to all of our viewers and all of our patrons, and we'd love you to consider joining our little community over on Patreon. It supports us as a channel, and we couldn't be more appreciative of anyone that does so. It also gives you behind the scenes, extra episodes, and early ad-free access.